All right, so why don't we get started? Good morning, everybody. And, on behalf of the Moving to Value Alliance Executive Committee, I'd like to welcome you all to this final webinar for 2021. My name is Steve Schutzer. I have the honor of being on the Executive Committee of this group. Before I get started, I want to introduce you to Karen Gilbert, and you'll hear more about 365 Media at the end of the presentation. But Karen has a couple of housekeeping announcements before we get started. Karen?
I do. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. As Steve mentioned, my name is Karen Gilbert. I'm your behind the scenes host this morning. Just a few housekeeping reminders. I know we're all well versed in virtual events nowadays, so I will keep this brief. All participants are muted automatically, and if you could please stay on mute until you need to speak, we'd greatly appreciate that. It helps us keep background noise to a minimum. And for our presenters this morning, a reminder, we'll advance your slides for you. Thank you for sending them. We'll indicate, if you could just indicate when you need to move on to the next slide, that will be helpful. Of course, if anyone has technical challenges, please send me a message via the chat function and we'll do our best to help you out. And finally, this meeting is being recorded so that you and other members of the MTVA community can listen into the updates and contribute to the post-event discussions. So with that, I will turn things back over and we'll get started.
Thanks, Karen. Did you advance the slide as you were speaking? It's
Sure
not online. Yeah, they're in meeting notes. So I just run through that and just advance to the next slide.
They are. It's trickling a little bit behind. There we go.
There you go. So here's the agenda today. Again, good morning. My name is Steve Schutzer. I'm an orthopedic surgeon and one of the members of the executive committee. So we've elected to use the TWISY approach again. TWISY is the way I see it. And my first exposure to TWISY was some years ago when I was going to give a talk in front of the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons. It was a 15-minute talk. And 2 days before, I got an email from the Academy announcing they were switching to TWISY. And I said, there's no possible way I can condense my talk into 5 minutes. I really had no choice. They were short on time. It actually turned out to be a very powerful method. It kind of forces you to get right down to the meat of what you need to say. So we've challenged our speakers today to use this method. Each speaker was asked to use 3 slides in 5 minutes, and each slide to address one of these 3 questions. What has occurred in your business practice or leadership role in 2021 that most positively impacted the move to improving healthcare value? 2, looking ahead, what excites you most about improving healthcare value in 2022? And 3, what are the obstacles that our community can help you overcome? After the speakers finish today, Jeff Hogan will lead a Q&A discussion. And finally, we're going to set aside some time for Artie Whitney, the founder and CEO of 365 Media, to talk about this new exciting partnership. Next slide. These are our presenters. You can see that they represent a broad swath of the various stakeholder constituencies in our state. Next. And these, just for familiarity, this is the executive committee. Everybody knows Paul and Jeff and Christine Arnold and myself. And we're very proud to announce John Rodas has agreed to step up. You know, Value Alliances have 8 different elements towards success, and one of them is having a convener, somebody of sufficient stature that can sort of stand above the fray. And we're very excited that John Rodas has accepted to be our convener. So we're here to work and serve as your community. Next. And I want to remind everybody that of our mission statement. The mission of this value, and we call it a Value Alliance, which is very important, is to create a value-based healthcare ecosystem with the highest quality outcomes at a reasonable cost for employers in our state and their healthcare consumers, I call it patients. Next. So 3 years ago at an on-premise forum at the Marriott, we discussed this concept of diffusion of innovation. It's now a principle that a social science principle that was pioneered probably some 60 years ago by Ian Rogers that tried to offer an explanation as to why and how and at what rate various technologies and social policies were adopted by our society. And next slide, I just punch it once. And we agree that at the time, for the moving to value principles, a framework, we were somewhere about 10%. And, you know, the mystery of this diffusion of innovation is that marketers focus on, next slide, the punch, at this mysterious 16%, because it seems to be that once you've got 16% market adoption, the principle of technology gains steam and becomes sort of irresistible as it goes up the curve. And next slide. And one of the goals of this alliance is to help move the curve towards the right. So how have we done? Next slide. So this is data from Health Affairs, Health Benefits in 2018. The bottom line conclusion was there were no big changes in employer-sponsored health coverage between 2017 and 2018. So fast forward 3 years, next slide. And guess what? This was just appeared recently, Health Affairs 2021, an update on employer-sponsored benefits. The premiums have increased once again 4%, and depending on individual or family premium packages of 17 or 28%, but really no major changes, although many of the plans have adopted telehealth and some expanded benefits. So I say to myself, there's a lot going on. All of us on the call are aware of that. Why haven't we seen it? Well, there are two possible reasons. One is that it takes several claim cycles to see these changes actually in print. And the second is that perhaps all of the innovations that we've seen and heard about and read about have not achieved sufficient scale to overcome the dramatic headwinds that we continue to face. Next slide. You know, when we talk about the question why, you know, and I think it's a good time to pause as we enter the new year. Why are we doing this? Why are we here on Friday morning, an hour and a half of our time? Why does this executive committee meet every Friday for an hour to talk about this sort of stuff? Next slide. And it comes down to this. I mean, the why for all of us is that we need to roll up our sleeves and keep advancing. This is about our patients. This is about we're all patients, we're all family, and we're all going to need to access healthcare. So this is our moral imperative. Next slide. And then, you know, this is data from Forbes just a couple of weeks ago. That 50% of Americans carry medical debt. This is a new chronic condition for millions of our fellow citizens. The number one cause of personal insolvency in the United States is healthcare debt. It's just freaking insane. Next slide. And this was from the New York Times. Americans' debt for healthcare will actually double what we thought it was. It's actually $140 billion. So this is the moral imperative. This is the why we're on this call today and what our goals are. Next slide. So these are our community presenters, and it's now an honor to call up the first speaker, Tom Woodruff, with the public and employee perspective. Tom?
Great, thank you, Steve. So our 2021 Moving to Value initiatives really began a couple of years earlier. We launched on October 2020 into an episode of care. If you recall from previous discussions, we defined procedure-based episodes as 120-day episodes, 30 days before, say, a surgery, like a knee replacement, and 90 days after. For chronic conditions, we're talking about annual, 12-month episodes for managing chronic conditions. We have entered into, to date, we've entered into risk-based contracts with 14 entities representing 331 TENS and almost 1,500 NPIs. We've broken out the providers that are participating into a general network as well as what we're calling a network of distinction. And we incentivize, and these are providers who have above average quality as we can measure by claims data, and below average cost. And we incentivize our members to utilize these providers. We actually pay dollars that represent 5 to 10% of the procedure costs or the episode cost as incentives to utilize these providers. Currently, our program size covers episodes representing over $144 million in annual spend. It's been a slow process of building up to this level, and I'll explain in the next slide some of our goals for 2022. So we're in the process of collecting applications from facilities and providers regarding a designation to be a center of excellence for different procedures. We're collecting clinical data from the providers as well as patient-reported outcomes. We are providing a larger incentives in 2022 for members to utilize these COE providers. In addition to that initiative, we currently have an RFP outstanding. We're in the process of evaluating proposals in a population health initiative. We intend to enter into one or more total cost of care risk-based contracts with large integrated networks in the state. And these networks aren't necessarily all under one organization's control. We may also have integrated networks of previously unaffiliated provider groups. We then intend to, in July of 2022, add a plan option for members to choose these integrated networks to be a plan option for them. As I mentioned, we've had challenges, and in the third slide, we discuss some of the things. It's really on both sides of the equation. First, on the provider side, some of our contracts have been slow to come to fruition because of providers have kind of objected to accepting risk by assuming responsibility for outcomes. Some of it has been organizational, and some of it has been from the individual providers who are participating in those organizations. We've also had challenges from members to engage with providers in managing their health. As I mentioned, we have a value-based insurance design, so we have the flexibility to provide disincentives or incentives financially to our members in terms of their utilization. We've tried a variety of communications techniques, social media, focus groups, and others, and we plan to launch a major re-engagement of our members in the open enrollment period this April, May, and June. And so we could accept ideas from this group for both how to engage our members better and also how to engage providers better in these value-based contracts.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Next speaker, Lorie George, private employer perspective, and Lorie is with Leonard. Lorie?
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to speak. My name is Lorie George. I am the benefits manager here at Leonard's. I've been here for 30 years, just had my anniversary. Next slide, please. So that is Stu Jr. on horseback at one of our ranches in Montana. He often goes out to our suppliers to visit with them and talk to them about quality and what we're looking for our customers. He really is involved in the whole process, but it doesn't stop at the products that we sell. Stu certainly does not want to be the norm. He wants to be the outlier. He does not want to be handed a canned product where there's no room for creativity, hence the quote, "Don't fence me in." Our journey to improving healthcare really started about 10 plus years ago. We, like everyone else, were concerned with the rising costs of healthcare and the fact that our team members weren't getting healthier. So we didn't like the direction that our healthcare was moving, so we grabbed the reins and changed our path. And we added programs like our centers of value and our benefit bucks that really had more of a skin in the game approach for our team members rather than just handing them out an incentive and HRA dollars. You know, we really wanted them to be aware what that really meant. We also had shopping for healthcare classes, showing team members there are cost differences even in the healthcare industry. You know, depending on where you go for services, we compared that to things that they shop for every day, like groceries or a television. We wanted to make sure our team members understood that the cost of healthcare does impact our business as well as their pockets. So really for question one, we started that journey long ago. Next slide. Big things have small beginnings. This is a picture of Stu Leonard's in Norwalk, Connecticut. We opened in 1969 with 7 items, and we only had 8 team members at the time. Today, we operate 7 food stores and 6 wine shops in Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey. As I'm sure you can guess, Stu is very innovative and wants to explore new ways of doing things. I don't know if any of you have ever met him. But his creativity certainly doesn't stop at milk, bread, and eggs. So after being with another carrier for 9 years, we still have a great relationship with, we took a big leap of faith and made a change in late 2020. Next slide. And we decided to be part of something new and partnered with Centivo, who at the time was relatively unknown in the tri-state area. Again, where big things have small beginnings. We were getting in on the ground floor with Centivo, and we were very excited to see where that could take us. As I said in the last slide, we wanted to be involved in the direction that healthcare was moving, and partnering with Centivo gave us that opportunity. Again, we had more elbow room to make changes to have an impact in what direction we were going. Their growth has been exciting to watch, and we're very excited to be a part of that. We're excited about selectively filling the network gaps with high quality, high value providers with Centivo's help. We're excited that we made a good decision and we are making a difference. We have saved on costs. And we're also excited to see what the next big thing to help with this journey and value for healthcare will be. Next slide. Sorry, I had more than 3 slides. I didn't know we were limited. What are the obstacles that this group can help us with? Well, I don't know if anyone is a Seinfeld fan, but this is a reference to the soup guy, which basically is about communication. No matter the quality of your offer or tool, bad communication will result in, you know, no soup for you. We know communication is key when trying to explain changes you make in healthcare and why you're doing it. So how do we communicate to team members the quality and value of this new plan design with Centivo and help them to understand, you know, there is no hidden agenda, to try and get over the perception that less expensive does not mean it's not quality. And the more expensive doesn't mean it's always better. To help them understand there is a trade-off. It is a smaller network with Centivo, but it is less costly to you. And we try to give them real analogies such as, you know, you're willing to drive 45 minutes to get a better price on a television, but you're not willing to drive 45 minutes to see a good quality doctor. Or they're willing to spend $300 on a designer bag, but they're not willing to spend that kind of money on their own health. They always choose the most expensive plan because they think it's the best. So how do we kind of steer them to, again, that better quality value plan design? And you need to be just as particular in healthcare communication, not just when you're ordering soup to get that mulligatawny that you're so craving, but so that they understand that plan design, why we made that change, and really, bottom line, what's in it for them. I feel like sometimes they're more likely to believe what their coworkers say after we do a class. And you kind of feel like the telephone game that you played as a kid, where the last person to hear the message gets the message all wrong. So, you know, they're down on the store floor, you know, all saying the wrong thing. So communication is one thing that we love to hear, you know, what other people are doing. Next slide. And this is my final bit here. So part 2 of that last question, it is infinitely better to have a few good men than many indifferent ones. That was from George Washington. So born again is the smaller network model like we have with Centivo. Essentially, we look at a few ways to control costs. 1, members get healthier, where we have our wellness programs, our preventive care, our medication adherence. And 2 is to have lower provider costs. We need to understand, though, who the quality doctors are. We need to understand what the quality measures are. What are the measures of excellence so that we can move to a value-based system? When you need to see a specialist, most people either ask their friends, who do you go to? Or they go and do a Google search. You know, what are the reviews that other people are doing? So ultimately, where can we find accurate, consistent, quality ratings for providers would be another great thing of how others are doing that, and we can get some help. Almost there.
Thank you very much, Lorie. And the next speaker is Lisa Trumble from SoNE.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here today. Pleasure to be with you this morning. We'll go to the next slide. For those of you that don't know SoNE, we're a Southern New England healthcare organization. Our network's a clinically integrated network that's comprised of the Trinity Health of New England hospitals and roughly 1,600 docs. We cover both Connecticut and Massachusetts. And to give you a little bit of perspective, we're the clinically integrated network that effectively consolidated 3 physician hospital organization structures in 3 different markets: Waterbury, Hartford, and Springfield, Massachusetts. So over the last 4 years, SoNE has managed a total cost of care book of business of roughly $6.1 billion. During this time, we saved our health plan partners in Medicare approximately $123 million. And in 2020, we saved CMS $22.4 million on 28,000 lives. That was number 1 in Connecticut and number 3 in Massachusetts in terms of savings to CMS. When we look at our cost of care, and to speak a little bit to what Lorie was talking about, we're a partner with Centivo. But when we look at our costs of care, and this is not just pricing, this is what it means to actually deliver a total joint replacement or a septicemia case, take care of a septicemia case, we're about 22% lower costs than our competitors in our market, and we have higher quality scores in these areas. So when we're looking at total cost of care, it's important for us to recognize that when we're trying to improve value, we're looking to improve total cost of care, which is a combination of cost and quality and pricing. It's not pricing alone. Next slide. So what have we done to improve value in the state of Connecticut? Well, we've been embracing in a pretty robust way, advancing and pushing new value-based perspectives. I've come from the Massachusetts market, so I've seen different models and different approaches to managing the cost of care. Connecticut's a little bit behind what the rest of the nation is doing in this regard. We are focusing exclusively on population health and care transformation and primary care redesign. Population health has not been a buzzword or a buzz concept in Connecticut until recently, and I think partially because the maturity of the value-based market is relatively low at this point. But those markets like Massachusetts that have a higher degree of penetration of ACOs or clinically integrated networks that are moving towards value have moved off of the terms of value and into the area of population health, recognizing that healthcare is delivered locally and the tools that are needed to improve health require looking beyond just what's involved in the medical care. We're also focusing on clinical integration strategies. I'm a firm believer that without integration, you're not going to get the improvements in cost and quality. And integration needs to occur across the continuum, not just within a particular organization. So aggregation, in my mind, is not integration. Integration means being able to facilitate care across the continuum, includes hospitals, providers, post-acute providers, community-based organizations, and others in the market that can help achieve better health outcomes for the patients that we're serving. Then our partnerships. We can't be integrated without partnerships in key areas. I don't believe as a healthcare system or a healthcare provider, we can deliver every component of healthcare well. So we need to partner with those that can actually that focus in specific areas and can do a better job than we can. In addition, we're focusing on improvements in additional partnerships with those new players in the market that can be disruptive, that bring either virtual care or a different tool to the mix, like a Dispatch Health or a Vera Health. Continued improvements in cost of care across all lines of business. We're taking downside risk in all lines of business, including Medicaid. And then diversification of our value-based strategies with direct-to-employer strategies. We're partnering today with Centivo and with Vera Health, working closely with Lorie and Stu Leonard's to help improve the cost of care and the quality for their employees. And then investments in tools and people with value-based expertise in our organization that have had years of working in this environment that can bring the intelligence and the tools that we need to be able to improve what we're doing. And then lastly, developing relationships with you all and those that are interested in advancing the value-based principles in the marketplace. Next slide. So how do we improve value in 2022? You'll see the schematic off to the right. This is throughout 2021. These are the relationships that we developed with what SoNE developed to help advance and improve the health of the employees and the patients that we're managing. So we're looking to stitch together other disruptive relationships that can help us achieve value. We're not interested in preserving the status quo. I don't think the status quo works for delivering healthcare in the way that we need to deliver it in the future. And we're looking to lead the conversation in Connecticut around value-based care. And then lastly, I would say for the Moving to Value Alliance, what I would look for you all is I would basically say, let's put our money where our mouths are and talk about how do we get rid of these outdated, entrenched perspectives that exist in Connecticut based on historical patterns of the managed care days, what didn't work, and how do we make it work? How do we make it work for the citizens of Connecticut that deserve a better healthcare outcome, better cost, and better quality? And then how does this organization, this group, begin to educate the community to focus on outcomes and cost and quality? Sorry. To Lori's last point, we're one of the few industries that has serious transparency problems with regard to both price and quality. If you are relying entirely on the feedback of individuals that are only marginally informed around what quality is, then our consumers are not making the best decisions around around the best providers for them for certain types of care. So our quality is hard to read. It's hard to interpret, hard to understand. People think a billboard is what quality is when in fact it isn't. And therefore they make poor decisions based on limited information because there isn't a consumable tool out there for them to understand what real quality means in healthcare. Next slide. I think I'm done. Thank you for having me. Steve, you're on mute.
Hey, Steve, you're muted.
Okay. Sorry about that. That was some trouble. The next speaker is Dr. Heather Towery, who presents from Eden Health, the virtual primary care perspective.
Thanks so much. So I obviously am the least creative and most literal interpretation of the assignment. So next slide, please. I'm Vice President of Clinical Strategy and Enterprise Partnerships at Eden Health. Eden is a healthcare delivery organization that provides primary care in a multitude of settings, virtually, in person, and we bring healthcare directly to employers, workplaces, and pop-ups with integrated, meaning in the actual same delivery of care with behavioral health and physical therapy. And Eden's mission really is to create a world where every person has a relationship with a trusted healthcare provider. So that is the scope to which I framed my questions. And what has occurred in my role? Sorry, I'm getting some background. Steve, I think maybe you're not muted again. To improve healthcare value, I think it's really the normalization of a new hybrid world. And I agree with everybody who spoke before me in terms of, you know, it's not completely normalized yet, but I do think that there was that movement. And I think that was driven by, you know, consumers being at home and still needing to get done what they had expected, and a more interconnected experience, which allowed people to accept virtual healthcare, a way in which they hadn't really thought about it before. And guess what? For many of them, it was more convenient to get healthcare where they were, whether that be in home, whether that be in their car, whether that be at another site. And then when these, you know, when you can develop a relationship with the same group of providers over and over again, instead of a, you know, rent-a-doc relationship, that really allows for better patient-centric whole person care, particularly when we're focusing on mental health. Next slide, please. So second question, in terms of what excites us most about improving value in 2022, for me, it's bringing Eden to more folks, and we're doing that through a variety of relationships. We work primarily with employer groups, but have expanded that to relationships with TPAs, as well as some carrier relationships. And the goal is really to bring a better member experience to more folks, and we can do that through different delivery models. Patient-centered medical home for more members is our goal, because we do think that lots of things have come between the provider and the member relationship, some of which are for the benefit, multitude of which actually delay care, delay actually getting done what the member needs to accomplish. And on the next slide, what obstacles do we still see? And Lisa, I agree with lots of what you just said. We need to, I think, move away from the older thinking of fee for service is the only way to go. I mean, the whole reason why we're here is to talk about moving to value. Assure reimbursement for virtual is not seen as less than or secondary, I think is really important. I think that benefits care across all platforms when folks get care where is most appropriate for them. It allows for people to have, you know, a better, more seamless relationship, and not defer care, which I think we're still seeing repercussions from deferred care at the beginning of the pandemic. I think now that we know lots more about COVID and how it's transmitted, and absolutely science won with the vaccine, you know, allowing people to get care where they feel most comfortable, I think is really important. And to the other people on the panel, move away from the status quo of paying high dollars independent of quality. Absolutely, we need to be paying for quality care. And I guess the last thing I would say is to reaffirm that quality primary care saves money. And I think I saw in the chat people were asking about, you know, it takes claims multiple cycles to be able to prove these things. I think primary care is going to take multiple years to prove that better primary care is most cost effective. So I think as a group, if we can challenge our consultants, challenge our employer groups to say, yeah, absolutely, you want to see return on investment in a year. But if you think primary care is going to make a difference like we do, we need to be looking at 2 years and 3 years. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Heather. The Alliance is hearing some common themes, no doubt, about the challenges. Our next speaker is Dr. Joe Quaranta, who will present the private physician practice perspective. Joe?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. My name is Joe Quaranta. I am a primary care physician. I'm also the president of Community Medical Group, which is a clinically integrated network of about 1,100 physicians, mostly in Southern Connecticut. And we have been participating in a lot of the different programs people have talked about today in our journey to value. So thanks for the opportunity to be here today. I also stuck pretty closely to the questions, so I'll run through them. What has happened to our market this year that has impacted our ability to move to value? I think there've been lots of negative things about the COVID pandemic, but I think one of the benefits that we've seen is that the disruption that we've faced in clinical practice has actually created some opportunities that I think have eased some of the barriers to transition to value-based care. To take on what the previous speaker had said, I think, for example, the rapid transition to telemedicine that happened in the peak of the COVID epidemic would have been something that would have never been able to been developed without that transition. I also think the disruption to our normal market and our normal way of doing business has actually made it easier for, I think, providers to see a easier path to a different payment model. Whereas the traditional fee-for-service model was entrenched for so long, the COVID pandemic disrupted that, and it actually opened up some opportunities for us to think about, are there actually better ways to provide care? And so that was one of the major changes that we faced. New payment models continue to change and continue to evolve and develop. And I think that's a real positive thing we're seeing. More so now than ever, we have more opportunities as a provider group to engage with different stakeholders, different folks who are looking to actually change the way we deliver healthcare. And I think that is actually changing, and we're at a peak more so than we've seen for many, many years. And to build upon that, I'm starting to see broader coalitions of both providers and stakeholders starting to engage in value-based care. And for those who have been doing this for a long time, initially it felt like you were on your own in doing these things, but we're starting to see multiple provider groups coming together. We're also starting to see multiple stakeholders on the providers, on the payer side, and on the employer side, and on the policymaker side come together, which I think is an important transition. And we're starting to see broader coalitions of stakeholders moving towards developing new programs that are going to bring us to value-based care. Go to the next slide. What excites me most about 2022, I think, as a clinician, my hope is that we will get back to much more of a normal status for our healthcare delivery. It has been challenging to deliver healthcare for the last 18 months, given the disruptions that we have faced. And so I'm optimistic and excited that we can actually return to some semblance of normal, because it is very clear that the disruption caused by COVID have really caused difficulties in delivering both ongoing maintenance care and dealing with our patients' acute needs. And the hope is that as we now get back to some semblance of normalcy, and we've learned to adapt to the issues we're dealing with, that we can actually return at least our delivery models back to some sense of normalcy. And I think this is not new to the folks on this call, but across the board, we're seeing a growth and interest among employer groups in engaging with provider groups in new delivery models. And this is a wonderful thing to see. And we're seeing more and more employers, both large and small, begin to engage in discussions with us around how we might deliver better care to their employees across the board. And I think that's a big change for us over the last several years. And we're starting to see this with very small employers and with very large employers. So this interest is running across the gamut. And the final point here is, and I think this is really exciting to me, is that new opportunities for better data and the ability to share data with our colleagues across the healthcare spectrum. One of the major limitations that we've had in trying to manage our transition to value has really been our ability to have accurate data to inform those decisions that we're making and to actually help us guide our progress and be able to report what our performance is. And we're starting to see slowly but surely, I think, the emergence of much better ability to actually share data and gain access to the information that we need to actually make the changes that we want to make. Because I think anyone who's done this for any period of time will know that the limitations we have on our data is one of the major roadblocks that we have to fix before we can actually do a better job at this. And I'll ask for my next slide. And so what can this group do to help? And I think this is an important issue. One of the things I'll bring up here, and I think I've worked in value-based programs now for 10 years. And one of the things I always come to is that we need clear definitions of what value is. And many times I feel that the value means something different to everybody. And it's challenging as someone who designs value-based programs and is responsible to implement them and to try to engage providers in understanding what value is, that we don't have a clear sense of what that is. Is value access? Is value cost? Is value quality? Of course, it's all of the above, but I think we do have to come up with clearer definitions of what value is and understand, I think importantly, what is value to the patients. And I think folks in roles like ours have a different view of value often than what our patients have as a view of value. And I think we have to synthesize though in a better way. And following from the first one is once we have a better sense of what value is, we need a more uniform value-based program design. We are bombarded with over a dozen different value-based program designs at any given time. And as provider groups, we need to have some normalization of those programs. There's lots of work going on to try to do this, but it has been slow to get going. And we can't have providers managing multiple different value-based programs as they go through their daily routine. Better data, as I said previously, is the key to actually help support those activities. The next two issues speak to two of our delivery groups that are in really desperate need of help and assistance. Primary care needs to be reinvigorated. I wish I could tell you that our primary care networks were strong and thriving. They are not. Our primary care delivery network in this state is under extreme stress. It will be under extreme stress for the near future. It is about to undergo a generational shift in its clinician makeup, as there is a large shift of retirements of a fairly aging population of primary care providers. And I think we are kidding ourselves if we think our primary care network is stable and is going to be strong going forward without major intervention. And the next point is our behavioral health delivery model is broken. It needs to be fixed. And we need to actually understand and recognize what the problems are. And one of the primary problems is our reimbursement model for behavioral health is broken. And we cannot do all the things that folks on this call want us to do with integrating primary care and behavioral health with the current reimbursement model. And finally, and this is not unique to the healthcare market. Everyone is struggling with this, but the healthcare market is under extreme stress in terms of worker recruitment. And this is not just for clinicians, but it is across the entire network. And we are already at the point where major organizations are rolling back services because they can actually not provide these staff to meet our needs. And that is it's a really chilling statement to say that in Connecticut, we are actually cutting back services because we don't have the staff to provide those. So I think we have to take this really seriously, and we have to come up with a solution to this problem because we're only at the beginning of it. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Fantastic presentation. Next speaker is Dr. Tom Agresta from UConn, who's going to discuss the health information technology perspective. Tom?
Good morning. Thanks to Steve for inviting me here. And I'm a professor in family medicine, but I also have a background in medical informatics. And the big thing that happened in 2021 that I'd like to share around Connecticut is that we have an official health information exchange. And that's due to the work of a large number of individuals, many of whom are on the call here. But that's actually a really important thing. And I think it actually supports all of the needs and activities that others have just mentioned. And Joe mentioned, Joe is a good part of helping bring forward this health information exchange as well. So Connie, which is Connecticut's Health Information Exchange, officially opened in May 2021. I know many of you know that, but perhaps not all of you on this call know that. And our hospitals and labs are required to connect and share data within the year, so that by May 2022, that should be happening, but it's actually happening quite a bit now. There's, well over 200 organizations that have signed contracts with Connie, and many of whom have begun to share things like admission, discharge, and transfer feeds. Some of whom are now, putting in clinical notes and discharge summaries. There's image reports that are going in. So all of these things are starting to happen now, and they are beginning. Now, this is a long journey. I've been part of trying to help get a health information exchange up for the better part of a decade, actually more than a decade at this point. So it's a really positive thing from my perspective. There also is the ability to actually see data from the physician, the PDMP, which is the, to look for substance abuse and substance use, as well as a single sign-on. And then very soon there will be integration with the electronic health records. So this is a really big deal. And I think there's a lot of applause that needs to be kind of given to the Office of Health Strategy. Vicki will speak a little bit about, her role in this, but I think this has been a big time multi-stakeholder, multi-year process. Connie is a nonprofit organization. I'm not on the board of Connie, but I do help support them in education and outreach activities. And it does allow us to connect to the health information exchange that actually exists in Connecticut already. There are several, including the network of networks that occurs through the EPIC, use. And Connie's information is down there for you to kind of see below. If you go to the next slide, please. So what can happen in 2022? So far, really what's happened with Connie is that the actual nonprofit was established, the relationships with healthcare organizations have begun, the data started to flow, but it really hasn't been utilized by the clinicians and patients and healthcare organizations yet as much, right? So that's this year's journey. So this year's journey, and I'm very optimistic about what this year can bring. This year's journey is really around trying to figure out how to integrate this health information exchange into the actual workflow of providers, into the clinician's workflow. So when Joe is seeing patients in his primary care practice, he'll be able to kind of pull in data that was at several different hospitals and pull them together and actually see it in his clinical care. I'm aware of the fact that there will be the ability to exchange images. So several healthcare organizations have agreed to pilot the ability to share image, not just the reports, but the actual images. So imagine, the fact that you don't have to repeat an image when, they're seen in another organization. So that'll be a really big value add. There's a group that's been working over the last several years around how to actually make medication history and medication reconciliation occur better. And that group has handed off its work to Connie, and now they're working on actually aggregating data from multiple sources to try to provide the best possible medication list at the point of care, which is a big deal. As a primary care clinician, I can tell you that it's a lot of work to try to pull that data together. This year, they're also going to be working on how to set up e-referrals. So a PCP to a specialist, a dentist, or a community health-based organization, we should be able to kind of send an electronic referral with appropriate data. And that information and that process will be worked on this year. The ability to share advanced directives, as we all found out in the COVID pandemic, advanced directives are a really important, kind of piece of information to share. And the ability to share it electronically has not really been with us. So this is something that I'm really hopeful will get going in the next year. The ability to share immunization data and public health surveillance data with our public health department and actually utilize the health information exchange for that data exchange and provide better population health is also being explored and worked on this year. And then finally, one of the last things, and I think one of the most exciting things, is the ability for patients to access their data directly from the health information exchange rather than going to 4, 3, 4, 5 portals to try to pull data from the various places they seek care. So hopefully we're going to begin to see not just the sharing and the rolling out of these opportunities, but we're actually going to perhaps see improved patient outcomes, reduce duplication and costs, the ability to analyze our data. And I really, as a primary care clinician, say, Joe, we need to improve our clinical workflow if we want our primary care docs to actually survive and thrive. And so we need to put the right data in the right place in the right part of the workflow so that they can do the best job they can. So that's what I think this upcoming year begins to open the door for. Now, it's not going to solve it. We're not going to see all of this year. So if we go to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about what I think this group can help with. What are the obstacles? Well, I can tell you that we didn't get here without teamwork. So teamwork was something where, the state's Office of Health Strategy, the Department of Public Health, the high tech, the Department of Social Services, the private organizations, all had to put in effort to kind of pull together this health information exchange. And Jen Sarles, who is the executive director for the HIE, has been wonderful in helping to kind of pull together a team to help lead that nonprofit. But what can we do? Well, we can get educated. We can get educated on how the HIE can improve healthcare, not just by the push and pull of data, not just by, the clinical summary that when Joe sees a patient in his office gets transmitted to the emergency room when the patient shows up there. That's important, but there are a lot of other things, like I mentioned earlier, that the HIE can do. So let's get educated. At the bottom are some links to a series of education and outreach activities that my team at UConn Health is been in collaborative work with the Office of Health Strategy in the past, and now also with Connie directly. So there's a podcast series and a webinar series, and we're going to have an upcoming webinar around public health and how public health from the CDC perspective and from Connecticut's public health organization can actually use a HIE to share data and improve the public health. And we'll talk a little bit about COVID, people's experience with that. We can describe and measure what value from an HIE means. We Joe's mentioning that, we need a better definition and a better way of actually measuring value. Well, maybe one of the ways we can do that is through data that passes through the HIE. So we can define what metrics matter for the HIE, for your success, for every one of your successes. What do you need to see happen from that? And then we can try to do that. There is a clinical advisory council forming in this year, and I'm responsible for helping to recruit folks. So any of you that know of really good clinicians that should be part of that clinical advisory group or be subject matters experts, please pass them on to me. My email is at the bottom there. And then I think the key is if it's going to be successful, sustainability is key. So, help us find grant funding, foundation funding, evaluation of outcomes and outreach. Help us promote the connection to usage by clinicians and organizations by incentivizing clinicians to utilize it. Help them pay for performance for the utilization of the HIE, not just for the utilization, but the effective utilization and for the outcomes that come as related to that. And then whatever you can do to participate in the outreach and education for the places that you work at and for people you serve and for those you connect with or lobby to, help us, utilize this to the benefit of everyone's outcome. And then finally, when it's able, let's get our patients connected, because I think there's a value there. So I'll stop there and say, what's your role? Figure it out and participate.
Thank you very much, Tom. I appreciate it, Tom. As you can see, a lot of these obstacles are going to require public policy intervention. We're honored to have Representative Terry Wood present the public policy perspective. Representative Wood.
Morning. Thanks, Tom, for that final sentence of asking everyone to get involved, because that's really what my role is here. I'm the chair of the Insurance and Real Estate Committee in the Connecticut General Assembly. I was made chair in December of last year and kind of hit the ground running in our long session last year with a lot of new committee members. So, we are constantly being asked, how can you lower health insurance costs to people in the state of Connecticut? And that's a big issue to tackle. So what I ultimately did was look at what the cost of healthcare is in our state. And while that's another issue to tackle, I did stumble across this value-based care. And when I see providers moving in that direction, I'm encouraged that we can provide more quality care. And I can then answer the question for people saying, we want lower health insurance costs with, we're moving in that direction. And in the end, have a better quality system that is offering lower cost solutions. Next slide. What excites me is just taking our current system and really flipping it on its head and moving towards this direction. And as someone new to this sector, I do work with a lot of people on this call. So saying flipping things on its head, I know is much more complex and long-term than just doing that. But I am excited about the fact of looking at things differently and working on the structural issues within our healthcare system here. I love the fact of prioritizing quality and then, looking past that and exceeding those expectations. When my constituents say, we have, very high deductible plans and, we're having trouble paying our bills, I want to be able to say, well, we can lower your healthcare costs. I also want to look at the economic development component of this, which is that we are creating a better quality system in the long run, which is going to, allow us to attract better talent, creating long-term job stability and a healthy economy. Our healthcare economy is huge in this state, and it just means a better place to live and better quality, of living. Next slide. So I think the obstacles is that as a legislator and policymaker, this topic is not as exciting. I put the word sexy in here as other competing policies. Being on the insurance and real estate committee is not something that a lot of people are looking at, and there's not a line of legislators looking to be on this committee. So I think the topic is very complex, and hopefully we continue to recruit good members to serve on it. The chairs change every 2 years. The committee membership changes every 2 years. So there's always going to be change in policymakers. I think that this current committee, the way it exists, works very bipartisanly. We have held meetings with many people on this call and look to experts to guide us in our policymaking decisions. I think that challenging the way things have always been done in the state. I mean, we are the land of steady habits here in Connecticut. So, change is always hard. So when we are talking about changes in healthcare and how the whole system works, it's obviously more challenging than we all know. I think that also as a policymaker, we are given solutions that are kind of more band-aids than fixes. And, there really are no silver bullets in fixing the healthcare system. It's much more, complex than what we can do at the policy level. We also, the challenges are, I put NIMBY here. If you are a legislator that has, a hospital in your district or other, physician groups in your district, you're going to be doing the best you can to preserve those jobs and how those things operate as they are. So I think change at the legislative level has a lot of these challenges. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carrie. And our last speaker is Vicki Beltry to represent the state government perspective. Vicki?
Thanks, Steve. And good morning, everybody. And I want to tell Lorie from Stu Leonard's "Don't Fence Me In" is the ringer on my phone. I love that song and that theme. It's been the ringer on my phone for quite a long time. So I'm happy to present here. I'm also pretty literal in the request. So I have some list of things I'd like to talk through. So if you can advance to the next slide, that would be great. I think, like a lot of people, telehealth and the rapid uptake of telehealth in Connecticut was a good thing for the most part. I think we still have some challenges around broadband access that we have to work through and equity considerations, but overall telehealth has been a good thing and provided value to a lot of people, including patients. We have seen a lot of alternative sites for care pop up. So, whether it's, not traditional office space or office locations, but clinics and other places people can go for care. I think that's a good thing. I think it shows some disruption in the market and overall is a good thing. Also, and I think COVID clearly illustrated some of the challenges with an over-reliance on fee-for-service. What it did to providers that are in mostly fee-for-service arrangements and in our hospital partners who saw significant drops in procedures, it clearly impacted, their financial situation. And to me, that was not a good thing that happened, obviously, but maybe a wake-up call about the need to look beyond fee-for-service. Solid primary care resourcing. A number of people have already mentioned this, but I think that also came to the fore in COVID. Many primary care practices were decimated and or were picked up in transactions because of an inability to resource. And the workforce, as we know, is the primary care workforce is in trouble here. Getting data out the door on trends on spending, I felt was a good thing. OHS finally able, under Executive Order number 5 from the governor, we've been able to get data out the door on what's going on in the market. We all talk about spending, but having a kind of bigger picture on what's going on where across the state is critical. We also created an affordability index with the comptroller's office, Tom's folks, Josh Wojcik and Kevin Lembo, and to really make the picture real about what happens in healthcare and how that impacts people's bottom lines and their ability to afford healthcare. So I'm very excited about that tool. We also saw a lot of action about this very serious disparities that Connecticut has and has had for quite a while, even pre-pandemic, but they came to the fore during the pandemic. And I think some of the legislation that passed on embedding equity into our work and driving equity and ensuring equity moving forward was a very positive development. Tom talked about the launch of the HIE, so I won't have to talk about that. I'm also very excited that Representative Wood was on the call because I do think that we've had much more legislative involvement in healthcare activities, and I think that's a positive thing. And I'm very, very encouraged to see what's going on, obviously, by the comptroller's office, Stu Leonard's Ability Beyond, the folks on this call to move value-oriented approaches forward. So next slide, please. What's really exciting me about the coming year is the opportunities and innovation and evolution in primary care. We really are, our office is working hard on some voluntary models on primary care. You have people out in the ether are working. I know Lisa's team. Everybody is working on this because it's absolutely critical. This gives us tremendous opportunities in primary care. I'm also excited on more data being shared more widely. The people on this call remember that we started with talking about a compact committee, and then we ended up with the benchmark executive order. So the collaboration and participation of the people on this call and others in the healthcare ether has been really critical to help us get to the point where we can share historic spending by our state, at the state level and our market levels, and continue the mining and the bundling of data we have going on in our office right now. We've been able to make inroads finally on bringing APCD data, the all payer claims database data, together with hospital discharge data and other data sets to get a fuller picture of what's going on in our healthcare market. And we're also mining our data for cost driver data. So that means not just high-level cost drivers, but getting deep down inside that data and looking at specific drivers and what we can do to address them. I'm also very excited about what we've done to try to expand healthcare coverage. Last session, we passed a piece of legislation called Cover Connecticut, which provides additional no-cost coverage to people of low income, fully wrapping around subsidies that were given under the rescue plan. We're also adding coverage, additional coverage for pregnant people, for undocumented immigrants, et cetera. More healthcare coverage allows us more opportunity to innovate as people who are seeing providers are now covered. I'm very excited to be looking at what's going on in the market a little bit more on acquisitions, mergers and acquisitions. Obviously, our agency has the beloved, I know to some people, beloved Certificate of Need program, but we are seeing a lot of merger and acquisition activity, particularly vertical acquisitions. That was a very heavy topic of conversation this year and how it may or may not be driving price increases in the market. And we ended up compromising on a piece of legislation that authorized us to put a work group together to come up with recommendations around this issue. And we have started that work group. Lisa, actually, I think Lisa is one of the members of that group. I'm also excited to see ongoing use of the HIE. Tom addressed this, but I think the more take up of the HIE and the more we see information moving, the more that's going to drive value in the state of Connecticut. Another exciting thing that happened that wasn't really talked about yet is race, ethnicity, language data collection, which is absolutely critical to us to address the deep disparities we have in the state of Connecticut. Legislation was passed last year charging us with helping our Connie and ensuring that providers are able to collect this information from patients and state agencies to collect this information. So we're working very hard across state agencies collaboratively with Connie at the table and with Connie, and the Connecticut Health Foundation is actually helping us with some convenings on providers to try to help facilitate that REL data collection. And I'm also hopeful we can move into SOGI data collection, that's sexual orientation, gender identity data collection. There was a survey done last year of the LGBTQ plus community that maybe this group I hope knows about, that showed the very serious impacts and inability and to access providers and or for providers to understand patients who are LGBTQ. It's a real challenge. Being a member of the community, I'd be right out there and tell you it is a major challenge. We're also excited that CMMI, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation, has recognized they need to evolve their models that they offer to providers and to states that are multi-payer in nature. So they're looking at broader models that factor in equity, that maybe aren't as restrictive, but also bake in that value equation. So we're really excited to see their evolution and their embrace of total cost of care models that factor in what we're seeing on healthcare spending growth and quality and primary care. We're also looking at, and I think it would be a great thing for us to explore together, potential opportunities on the prescription drug side. We talk a lot about our providers, but one of the biggest challenges to affordability in Connecticut is prescription drug costs for the residents of the state of Connecticut. So continuing to work on that, I think, is critical. And finally, like I said earlier, using our affordability index to test some of the policies that we're going to put forward to see how they actually impact people's out-of-pocket costs and what they're putting out every month in their expenses for healthcare. So next slide, please. What are some of the obstacles to us moving forward? So this has been said, I think, in multiple ways today, but thinking of healthcare delivery in new ways. I think COVID was a wake-up call that healthcare as it has existed for the last so many years needs to evolve. Returning to the same models and the same structures isn't necessarily going to achieve the most value for the state of Connecticut and for residents of our state. Again, value, and Joe brought this up, and I'm very happy to see Joe here today, one of our best partners on healthcare work at OHS. But value does go beyond costs. We need to look at what's happening in the equity, with what's happening with equity in terms of disparities and in community health. upstream interventions, things that stop conditions from occurring, preventing conditions from occurring. I think we have obstacles there in terms of getting people to the table, embracing those models when everybody is really running on fumes. I think a lot of burnout going on across the spectrum. Breaking away from fee for service, I think, is a big obstacle. Tom addressed that early on. It's been a theme, I think, today. Fee for service is, you know, the basic structure of healthcare still in Connecticut. And as Lisa, I think, addressed, we are behind many other states on this score. And I think we need to get beyond it. We need to keep moving forward. And the nature of some of the models being voluntary, and CMMI, I think, acknowledged this, has people sitting on the sidelines sometimes and not wanting to get in that structure. That's notwithstanding many, many challenges to getting into value-based care, which include resource, technology needs, et cetera. One of the other obstacles I think that we have that I don't think anybody has addressed today is workforce issues, or as somebody may have said it, but we are seeing very serious workforce issues across the spectrum in the state. The behavioral health workforce, hospitals are facing it. It's all across the state. How are we going to wrestle with that and continue the work moving towards value? Another point is reconciling the need for employers to have every provider in a network versus having maybe fewer providers in your network while still offering choice to your employees. We know that's a struggle for employers, but we do think that there are challenges there in terms of cost. And Tom talked about this when he talked about what the comptroller's office is doing. The other obstacle, or another obstacle, as I tried to address earlier, I think we need more people participating in these community health strategies and in being at the table on these upstream interventions and broadening the voices that are heard in these kinds of conversations. Is not easy, but I do think we have to really tackle these upstream issues if we're going to try to drive value down the road. And finally, encouraging employers. I think we would love to see employers have their data in the APCD. But as you all know, there was a Supreme Court case a while back that limited that, but doesn't prohibit employers from putting their data in the APCD, and we want to encourage that to happen. And the federal government is now playing a role here with all payer claims databases nationally. And I think you're going to see an evolution to either a national APCD or a weaving together of states' APCDs to make data more available across the United States. So those are just some of the issues, but I want to stop by saying and thanking this group who is actually key to getting us to Executive Order number 5 and the work that's going on under that executive order around cost growth benchmarking, primary care targets, and quality benchmarks. It's been a great privilege to work with the people involved in the Moving to Value Alliance. So with that, I'll turn it back to Steve.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And Karen, can you take down the deck so we clean the slate here? Thank you. Appreciate it. So I have some questions and answers here. We have a very short period of time to do this in, and I'm going to insist from our presenters that you keep your answers really crisp, and I'm going to cut you off if you are giving a speech. So thank you very much to all of our presenters. Hang on for the end of this because we're going to give our presentation on how we intend to build and broaden our community quickly with a professional organization. I'm going to start with Dr. Quaranta. Thank you very much for your comments. Your question about the definition of value is a really, really important one. You know, it's like, how do we define world peace? Some people say, how do we define quality? I remember having that question last year from an employer and, saying back, well, that knee that's supposed to cost you 20 grand, that cost you 100,000 because of the infections and complications, that's quality. And, we have ways of making this more concrete. For employers, this whole notion of cost and quality and value, value appears to be predictability of cost and quality on the outcomes, getting rid of the convexity of risk and things of this nature. And my question to you is, it's kind of a provocative question. You are in the middle of a battleground in New Haven, in Fairfield County between, very expensive hospital systems. As a value-based primary care leader and organizations, the primary care physician is the tip of the spear. That's really what we're trying to talk about here, especially in a state that has had a traditionally very low investment in commercial markets for primary care. How do you, as a leader in your organization in this very expensive healthcare marketplace with tremendous variation in cost and quality, as demonstrated with our RAND results last year, how do you help to build the clinical integration and the steerage into episodes of care, especially when you're getting contracted with employers and self-funded groups like STUs and things of this nature? What is your role? How do you see your role? How can you help to make things better for employers that are looking to move the value? That's a big question. I'm not giving you much time, and I apologize. Yeah.
We could have a whole talk on that. I'll give you the short answer of what we can do. One of the things that we do in our organization is we spend time going back to our frontline clinicians and our frontline providers, and we directly engage them in a regular basis and trying to understand what they think are the things that are going to improve quality access outcomes for their patients. And we try to construct the way we engage our physicians and our other clinicians based around that. And so to some extent, we minimize the external noise that's going on from the 100 different programs and different measures that we have, and try to hone in on what we're seeing, where our providers are facing patients on the front lines, and try to redirect it a little bit that way. Because honestly, there's too much noise out there for us to direct that directly to our providers. As I said earlier, they can't manage 10 different programs, 120 different measures. And so we've taken the opportunity to take a little bit of that off their plate and really engage them in what they think is important. I left a meeting before I came here. It was a meeting of our pediatricians who came together to define what they felt was important to focus on for quality next year. And so that's what we're going to focus on. And it was direct feedback from folks who were about 20 minutes from seeing a patient, telling us these are the things that challenges we're seeing. And I think the more we can bring our frontline providers into the conversation, and less folks like us who spend a lot of time in meetings in terms of designing these plans, I think that's the key message. Talk to our patients, talk to our clinicians, and that will be the path to figure out what value is.
That's great. That's really helpful. Heather, I'm going to move over to you a little bit. So we look nationwide, especially since COVID, there are billions of dollars in money coming into tech-enabled advanced primary care. We see it everywhere, and there appears to be a paradigm with tech-enabled advanced primary care that the organization can take risk, can bear risk, can be assigned to a patient. That secondly, that they've done care transformation via an integrated practice unit and can see the patient in person and virtually, and that there's a patient-reported outcome and a net promoter score aspect to it as well. That's pretty exciting. That type of paradigm is exciting. And here we are in Connecticut, as many have referred to, and as I have in the past, as the land of frozen molasses. How does this exciting new tech-enabled advanced primary care model come into Connecticut and be relevant to players, to employers? And how are you potentially able, it's similar to the question that I just asked, able to intrude yourself into legacy provider organizations, one, and get this longitudinal steerage for employers and their high cost things, knees and hips and babies and things of this nature, and high volume procedures as well. Building those longitudinal relationships. Again, this is an hour discussion that we could have, but I'm hoping you just respond to that quickly.
An hour discussion in 32 seconds.
You got it. You got it.
No problem at all. So I really appreciate all the things you said. Maybe just taking the last part first. We too are in, directly survey, have direct conversations with our providers all the time. And I do think that allows us to, I think somebody put in their slide, flip it on your head a little bit. I think Vic, maybe that was you. Connecticut specifically, I mean, I think I've taken a lot away from what everybody said. I still think it's really important that we deliver care where folks are. I think, you know, all the employers now have a date on their calendar that they're like, that's it, we're not moving from it. You know, some of it is January, some of them it's March, but there's still going to be folks that are at home. There's still going to be folks when we go back into the office that don't want to take a whole day to go be seen in brick and mortar. And I know we have lots of brick and mortar providers here. I don't mean to undermine that. We all need to see people in person sometimes. How, you know, the risk plus or minus, I think, you know, I think where we're going is that you need to take on more risk, to be honest, Jeff, to be seen as a factor. But I think to me, it's about the right risk, because I don't want to take risk. If, as I mentioned in my words, you know, if an employer isn't going to invest in working with us for a couple of years, it's really hard to show value delivered on the short term if you're not going to change the course of the screenings, and if you're not going to change the course of getting them into care when they need it. And I think that the relationship, you know, catching people when they start to have knee pain, catching them when they start to have back pain, there's good data to say that decreases surgeries, right? Like if you get them into PT, if you do proactive things, they're going to need less surgeries, which in the longer term will save a lot of cost. Hope that
Perfect.
hits on some of those.
That's perfect. Vicky, 30 seconds. You were really instrumental in getting Connecticut data into RAND for the first time ever. And it's had a big impact, and people are looking at it from public policy point of view. 30 seconds, literally, what's our next steps with RAND? And are you still participating?
Short answer, yes. We are still participating. I think we signed the agreement for the 4.0 or whatever the next number is. We are using it. We are using it daily in our work in terms of either the SoNE program or in the benchmarking work behind the scenes, examining what that data is showing us in terms of the costs of certain procedures and the overall rate of percentage of Medicare for our different systems across the state. So very useful, and we're going to continue to do it as long as we can.
Excellent. So Tom Woodruff, 30 seconds as well. What can the MTV community do to accelerate your efforts and the value of your efforts? And do you see your efforts being extended to employers in the state being able to share in the work that you've done?
Two things. One is provider engagement and willingness to accept risk. Some of our contract negotiations went on for months, trying to rally support within the organizations to enter into risk-based contracts. The second one, which has been mentioned by others, is data. We've spent an awful lot of time this past year in cleaning data and making data more reliable for providers and for us. That's a challenge. As you know, we have Signify Health as a partner, and part of their job is to be able to feed data to providers during the term of our contract so that they can see what's going on with episodes of care and to give them the technology that they need to be able to do that. So I think from here, provider engagement, willingness to accept risk, and also to work with all the other people who are here to make sure the data improves.
That's great. Thank you. I am out of time. I'm going to turn this over to RD Whitney, who is going to talk to you all about some exciting evolution for moving to value. RD?
Great. Thank you, Jeff. So everyone on the call today is involved now in two very, very exciting, very powerful movements. One is the MTVA itself, which has the power to improve healthcare in Connecticut, if not the nation. The other is the power of community. We've just been through 22 months or whatever of this pandemic, and it's pretty clear that community literally saved the world economy and kept things glued together. So my name is R.D. Whitney. Next slide, please. I'm the CEO of 365 Media, and we help companies develop communities of power, communities that can really cause change. I've been doing that for 30 years. I've developed 5 institutes in accounting, in HR, in recruiting. During the pandemic, there was this interesting need for people to suddenly meet online, and I had a lot of online virtual events experience, and me and 4 other co-founders founded the Virtual Events Institute, which has now trained over 2,000 professionals around the world. But it also, more importantly, kind of taught us best practices in doing this so that we don't have to jump on a plane and fly to Las Vegas for a lunch meeting, that we can really create more dynamic change quicker using the power of virtual, but not in replacement for in real life. But you are part of a community. The other thing I'm very proud of is that I'm the founder of the Community Leaders Institute. During the pandemic, in February actually of this year, TechCrunch referred to the chief community officer as the new CMO. And most organizations are converging on the community, the power of the community model. And you're seeing it in brands like Peloton and Instant Pot, the #1 selling product of all time in one day. But you're also seeing it, and I was on the phone with a VP of community at an electronic component manufacturing company. And I said, why do you have a VP of community? And she said, our electrical engineers are thriving fans of our products. They help design our products. They help move our products. So community has always been here. It's been here since the biblical times in tribes, but it has really it has been a slingshot during COVID. And you'll see associations, you're seeing media and event companies no longer saying, hey, see you next year, but creating year-round communities, corporations, nonprofits, NGOs. And we're using the power of community here to bring MTVA back together. Which, through the pandemic, it was able to do through the power of virtual events, but we're going to be culminating in late April with a live in-person event in Hartford. But you've all been sent an invitation to the MTVA community, and I really encourage you to join. It's a simple click to join. That's going to connect you with 300 to 400 of your peers that are all involved in this very, very powerful movement of MTVA. So it's an online year-round community. It's very easy to use. We have a dedicated community manager, Don, who's on this call here today, and I'm going to introduce him. And we have a dedicated virtual events and live in-person event professional as well, dedicated to your community. And this is your community. You have the power to grow this community. You have the power for this to thrive. So who is 365 Media? Next slide, please. Just real quick, we build year-round communities. We've worked with some of the largest brands in media organizations in the world, nonprofits, associations, corporations. We're the founders of the Community Leaders Institute, which is the professional global organization for the community profession, of which there are approximately 5 to 6 million professionals in the world. And we have an incredibly talented team to support MTVA. Next slide, please. So my name is R.D. Whitney. It's next slide, please. It's very easy to reach me, rd@365media.com, rd@365media.com. You'll also see Karen. Karen is running today's meeting. She's Karen@365media.com, and she'll be running our events in live and online. And Don Brown, who you'll get to know, who is your new community manager in the MTVA community. And he's don@365media.com. Next slide, please. So we're just going to take a quick tour of the community. Like I said, you've all been sent an invitation to this. This event itself is being recorded and will be stored in the community, along with historical documents to date of the MTVA progress so far. But you're going to see this really culminate and snowball. So with that, I'm just going to take you on a little tour of your community. I'm going to share my screen here. So when you come in, you're going to notice it's already preloaded with lots of information, because we've gone and taken things that are related to the MTVA progress so far in the past couple of years and loaded it all in. So you'll see, sorry about that. You'll see the historical documents. You'll see lots of articles that have been shared. And you have the power to post articles, connect with your peers, and be vocal and build this community and invite others in. So first thing you want to kind of check out is you're going to come in and it's going to ask you, what do you hope to get out of this type of community? Really encourage you to fill out your profile, because then people can find you. They can find you by the region you're in case maybe you want to get together for coffee in the Connecticut area, or they can find you by subject area matter or interest group. So I really encourage you to complete your profile, which only takes just a few minutes to do, but it's going to make it a much more valuable experience. We have created topics within the community that we think are relevant to MTVA. We are looking for ambassadors of the different topics because people help grow what they help build. We want everybody to feel like this is their community. So content and information will be, and networking will be categorized directly to this. All events running forward will be in this format and will be stored in the community. So you have the convenience of being able to go back to prior events and participate live or recorded in the future. You will be able to see, now we just started inviting people in last night, but you will start to see that people are coming in. And you will be able to connect and network with them. You will be able to send them private messages. Think of this as a walled garden. This is a curated walled garden for you and for MTVA to advance the mission. You will be able to discover various areas. And you will also see, as I mentioned, that all events, including this webinar, will be listed in the event area. It's a very powerful, very simple format. You'll be familiar with it if you've done LinkedIn groups or been involved in Facebook groups, but the difference is this is private. This is not accessible to the world. This is only to the MTVA qualified community, which is inclusive in itself, but very qualified. The other thing we just want to point out is that we are making plans now because, well, this is face-to-face. I always like to say that when people say, well, I can't wait to get back to face-to-face. We actually are face-to-face. We're just not burning carbon right now or taking away from our family schedules and being able to meet in this way. And what an incredible meeting today. But we are going to have an in real life experience again at the end of April. And we are working on that now, similar to what MTVA has done before and helped to advance its mission. So again, we are here to help you. Don is your community manager. Join. Feel free to ask him. He's here to help advance the MTVA's mission. You can ask him to post for you if you want. You can ask him to help connect you to another member. He will be posting polls in the community at the beginning of the week. And every Friday, you will see, when you come in, you will see that there is a summary. So every Friday, you'll receive a summary of the things that happen in the community. So you don't have to participate every minute, every hour. You can just watch the summary at the end of each week, if you will. And but Dawn can show you how to invite others, help you post that to social media so other people see it. There's lots of power in this. So I know we're on limited schedule and everybody's dedicated a lot of time to this meeting, but I wanted to make sure you are all aware of the power of this community that is just about to take hold and the power that it can have on the mission of MTVA. And we are very proud and grateful and thankful for being able to take the management role for the Alliance. So thank you very much.
That's all, folks. We're done for today, and thanks to all of our presenters for participating.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone.